There we go.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today in this webinar. If you're in the right spot, you're here for the webinar, Preventing Unwanted Guests at Your Summer Picnic and Barbecues. Today, we're going to talk through a handful of food safety tips and some strategies to prevent foodborne illness. My name is Amy Johnston. I'm a regional extension educator for University of Minnesota. I work in food safety. And I office out of the Dakota County location, but I support the state. And then today we have Lauren on supporting us during our webinar. If you have any technical questions, please reach out to Lauren. And then she'll also be sharing some material later in the webinar. So thank you, Lauren, for being here today. Then before we get going, if you need or want captions, you can find the closed caption, that little CC button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and then you can enable that at any time. Okay, so now let's talk food safety. We'll do a quick poll. Lauren will launch that poll. So please select which answer or answers you think can be a cause of foodborne illness at summer events. Is it poor hand washing, inadequate temperature control of hot and cold foods, or cross-contamination? So far, I see a lot of temperature control, cross-contamination, hand washing. Good. Temperature control still in the lead. Okay. Looks like it has slowed down. So, oh, there's a few more. Okay. So we have inadequate temperature control, 54%, cross-contamination, 31%, and poor hand washing, 15%. Okay. Lauren, you can end the poll if you want. Okay, so that was a tricky question because all of the answers are correct. So these can all be causes of foodborne illness at picnics or barbecues. So by the end of today's webinar, I hope that you leave with the confidence to prevent foodborne illness at your summer event. So today we're going to briefly cover bacteria that cause foodborne illness, strategies to prevent foodborne illness, and then we're going to review the temperature danger zone. So now let's take a few minutes to understand the pathogens that are involved in the majority of foodborne illness outbreaks here in Minnesota. So a pathogen is a bacteria that causes illness. We know, that there's a lot of good bacteria and there's also bad bacteria. So bad bacteria are those pathogens that will cause illness. Foodborne illness is classified as an outbreak if 2 or more people who ate the same food from the same place in a similar time frame and have similar symptoms. So that's an outbreak when 2 or more people. And here in Minnesota, the Department of Health investigates those reports of foodborne illness and will determine if it's an isolated incident or if it is an outbreak. So the data up on the screen is from Minnesota Department of Health, and it's from 2010 through 2022. And in Minnesota, in that time frame, we had 640 foodborne outbreaks. You can see that 50% were from norovirus, 20% from salmonella, 6 were from STEC, and that stands for Shiga toxin producing E. coli, 4% from Campylobacter, and then there's 9% from bacterial intoxication, and that's from a variety of pathogens that produce a toxin that will then make people sick, and then 11% from other or unknown. We're not going to talk about the bacterial intoxications or the other today. We'll focus on the other 4. So norovirus makes up about 50% of our foodborne outbreaks in Minnesota. And norovirus usually spreads when someone who is sick does not wash their hands properly and then handles or prepares food. Salmonella, E. coli, and Campylobacter, those can just be found in raw poultry and meats. They occur, or they live just in different animals in the intestines, and when those animals are processed, it can transfer to other parts of the meat. So Campylobacter, E. coli, and Salmonella, they can be destroyed by proper cooking and holding of foods. You also may recall hearing about some foodborne outbreaks with E. coli or Salmonella with produce, and that happens when there's cross-contamination caused by improper handling of food during preparation or serving. So symptoms of foodborne illness can start as quickly as a few hours after eating contaminated food, or it can have a delayed onset of 1 to 2 days. So why is foodborne illness a risk at picnics or while grilling? Typically, these type of activities are occurring outside the home, so we don't have the same amenities that we would in our home kitchens. So while grilling or at a picnic, there might be limited or even no access to wash your hands. So there might not be a sink. It's hot outside, which definitely impacts the temperature of our foods, especially this summer with how hot it has been. So there's 4 main opportunities where you can practice food safety habits to prevent foodborne illness. So over the next several minutes, we'll review those tips on keeping it clean, separating food to prevent cross-contamination, and cooking and keeping foods hot, and then keeping cold foods cold. So for any type of food handling and serving, the first step is always creating a clean space. So for grilling, before you grill, you definitely want to scrub the grill grates with a wire brush to remove any food debris or dirt from the last use. If you store your tongs or flippers outside, wash them in soapy water before using because they can be dirty from any bugs or dust or from the last use. For picnics, bring a tablecloth or a blanket to cover the table because you don't know who used that space last, and this will help create a physical barrier between the table and your food. And then now you might be scratching your head because I said, at these types of events, you might not have access to a sink to wash your hands. But washing your hands with soapy water is really important in preventing the spread of bacteria. So if you're at home grilling, take that time to go inside and wash your hands after cleaning that space and before handling your food. However, if you don't have access to a sink to wash your hands, hand sanitizer can be used. It's important to know that hand sanitizer only kills bacteria and viruses. It does not remove dirt. So if your hands are visibly dirty, you want to try to brush off that dirt or debris before using this hand sanitizer. So to properly wash your hands, wet with warm water and add soap, scrub for at least 20 seconds and rinse, and then turning that faucet off with a towel. For hand sanitizer, you want to rub your hands together, really getting between your fingers and you're going to rub your hands until that gel has been absorbed, so your hands are completely dry. And like I said, having clean hands before handling food is key to preventing foodborne illness. Think back to the slide of the Minnesota foodborne outbreaks. 50% were caused by poor hand washing or poor hand hygiene. And then safe food handling involves keeping certain foods separate from each other. While grilling, prevent cross-contamination by using separate utensils and plates for raw and cooked foods. Cross-contamination is that spread of pathogens or the illness-causing bacteria from a contaminated source to a food. So the source of contamination can be dirty hands, unsafe water, or raw meat, poultry, seafood. Cross-contamination can occur if you use a set of tongs to pick up raw chicken, place it on the grill, and then use those same tongs to remove cooked food from the grill without cleaning those tongs in between the use. So rinsing a plate or utensils under water is not sufficient to remove the bacteria. You need to wash those in soapy water to remove the bacteria. And at picnics, we want to keep food separate to help with that temperature, maintaining that cold temperature. So use one cooler for your beverages and another cooler for cold foods. Beverage coolers are going to be opened up more frequently than your cooler for your foods. So the more times you open up that cooler, the quicker the internal temperature of that cooler is going to rise. We want to keep cold foods at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below, and this is because of that temperature danger zone. So the temperature danger zone is the range between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit that bacteria or pathogens really love. They can grow rapidly. They can multiply. In fact, they can double in their quantity every 20 minutes if they're in this temperature danger zone between 41 and 135 degrees. Some pathogens only need a few hundred cells on the food to make you sick, and others need thousands. So it's really important to limit or prevent the amount of time that food is in that temperature danger zone. If you prevent it, then you're reducing that risk of foodborne illness. So let's talk about how to keep the hot foods hot above 135 and how to keep our cold foods cold below that 41. So when cooking, you cannot rely on color like grill marks or how it feels to the touch alone to tell if a food is fully cooked. Always, always use a food thermometer to check the internal temperature of the food. Lauren's going to share a resource in the chat that has some instructions for how to use a food thermometer, and then it also has the internal temperature chart that you see on the screen. So when checking your temperatures of your foods, check multiple pieces on different spots on the grill. Depending on the grill, the heat might be stronger in one area than another. So if you have 6 different chicken breasts on the grill, check 2 or 3 of them at different spots. Have a plan for the order have a plan in the order in which you're going to be cooking all your foods. So the foods come off the grill at about the same time. This is really important in keeping foods hot while holding before you're going to eat. So for example, if you're cooking bratwurst and hamburgers, a bratwurst is going to take a lot longer to cook than a very thin hamburger. So you're going to want to put those bratwursts on first, but both of those foods will take longer than thinly sliced vegetables. So you'll want to have that plan for how you want to space out your food. And once cooking is done, you check that internal temperature of the food. Hold foods to keep them above that 135. You want to keep them out of the danger zone. So if you have room on your grill at either an upper shelf or off to the side, cover them, hold them there so they stay warm. Or if you're at home, you know, you can get to your kitchen easy, cover them, put them in your oven just to hold them until you're ready to serve. So keeping cold foods at 41 degrees or below can definitely be very challenging in the summer. So if you're at home, keep foods in a refrigerator or with a cooler with ice or ice packs until you're ready to eat. If you can, serve foods on ice. So on the screen, you see two pictures of different bowls. They're a larger bowl, they've put some ice, and then they've put a smaller bowl inside with their food, so that ice will help keep that food cold while it's sitting out for serving. Another strategy is to use smaller batches. So if you have potato salad, instead of putting it in one large bowl, separate it into two smaller bowls, only bring out one bowl at a time and leave the other one in the refrigerator or cooler until you need to bring it out. And then lastly, return foods to the cooler once done serving, and people can just go to that cooler to get a second serving if they need. And then for leftovers, you can make that decision if you want to keep or toss based on some information. So check the temperature of that food. If it's in the temperature danger zone, so between that 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, and you don't know for how long it's been in that range, consider throwing it out. If it is in that temperature danger zone between that 41 and 35 degrees, but you know it's only been sitting out for service less than 2 hours, you can chill it down quickly by either putting it in the freezer, separating it into smaller quantities and getting them in the refrigerator to chill really quickly. But then again, that's only if that food, you know, it hasn't been in that temperature danger zone for more than 2 hours. Any foods that have been sitting outside for more than 2 hours, you should probably throw away. Okay. So just some key takeaways. So remember, prevent those unwanted guests, those pathogens, those bacteria by always practicing hand washing or using a hand sanitizer if there's no sink available. Use separate plates and utensils for raw and cooked foods, and use a thermometer to check the temperature of the food and compare it to that minimum internal temperature chart. And then keep your hot foods hot and your cold foods cold. Okay, so Lauren just shared in the chat the link to the evaluation. So please remember to complete the evaluation for this webinar. After you complete it, you'll receive the certificate of participation. And for those who are needing the well-being points, you will get those about the first week of the month following the webinar. We still have a lot of webinars planned for the rest of the summer. So you can follow that link or scan the QR code and check them out. Lots of different ways to get more information and connect with us. For more food safety, you can follow us on Facebook. And then there's also the answer line. The answer line is a fantastic resource for any of your household questions, and you can connect with them online, phone, email, or on Facebook.
Amy, there was one kind of question in the chat.
Yeah.
If you do you have any strategies for longer term events like a camping trip to keep things cold in a cooler?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So for extended trips like camping, you definitely want to invest in a very well-rated cooler, one that has a really tight seal. I would say one that is large enough that you can pack a lot of ice packs, or even just bagged ice. When you're packing a cooler, the tighter you pack it with your food and that ice, it's going to stay colder longer. So a fully packed cooler is going to maintain that temperature longer than a cooler that's only halfway filled or less. And that's just because a cooler that's only about halfway full or less, there's a lot of just open air space. And it's that air temperature that's going to warm first. And once that air temperature warms, then your food will start to warm. Definitely do planning in the order of the foods that you're going to use. So plan out your meals and make sure that the foods you're going to need first are on top in that cooler, or you're going to go sequentially from left to right. That way you're not digging around, keeping the cooler open, taking foods in and out. So definitely planning ahead. And I would say, what else? Just make sure everything is surrounded by ice. So if you're going to have multiple layers of food stacked on top of each other, make sure you're putting in some ice packs or ice in between each layer of food, just to really keep that temperature cold on all sides. I hope that answers the question. If whoever asked that, if that doesn't, please chime in, and I can talk some more to it. Any other questions?
One other question popped in here. Is it a good idea placing aluminum foil in the grill on the grill before cooking?
There's no food safety concern with that. If you're so always clean your grill. I know, yeah, some people like to put aluminum grill on their grates before they put their food. And that's fine. I think that's your preference. Treat it the same way as you would your keeping food separately. So if you're going to have, let's say, raw meat and then vegetables, have those on separate foil places, just so any of those juices from the raw meat don't run over to your vegetables. Because if you're cooking your vegetables, you might not cook them to the same temperature as you would your chicken. So you just want to make sure that there is a barrier there between those if you're going to cook on foil. Good questions. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you all for participating. The recording and the copy of the slides will be sent out in the upcoming days. Please remember to complete that evaluation and check out the listing of upcoming webinars. Appreciate your time today.